Joseph Borrell urges global action to prevent Lebanon's collapse amid escalating Israeli strikes. Yair Lapid urges a major political initiative for a regional settlement in the Middle East. And the Kremlin confirms Russia will respond to the unprecedented escalation by the outgoing US administration. It's exactly 4 p.m. local time and you're watching Q News. We begin today's bulletin with the latest developments in Lebanon.
كل المستهدفين هن مدنيين. وضع شيء مرعب، شيء بيخوف.
European Union Foreign Policy Chief Joseph Borrell has visited Beirut during intense Israeli-Hezbollah clashes. Borrell met Lebanon's caretaker Prime Minister Naguib Mikati and planned talks with Parliament Speaker Nabih Berri to address the crisis. Hostilities escalated after Israel's September offensive on Lebanon, where Israeli airstrikes and ground operations have severely impacted southern Lebanon and other cities. European Union Foreign Policy Chief Joseph Borrell has urged immediate international action to end the escalating Middle East conflict, warning Lebanon risks collapse due to Israeli strikes targeting southern areas and cities. Speaking in Beirut, Borrell stressed the need for an immediate ceasefire and adherence to UN Resolution 1701. He condemned the strikes, called for acceptance of the US ceasefire draft proposal, and announced 200 million euros EU support for Lebanon's army. Borrell also emphasized ICC impartially and denounced attacks on UNIFIL peacekeepers. Secretary General of the Arab League Ahmed Abul Ghait has condemned Israel's ongoing aggression, especially in Lebanon. This came as he spoke at the Arab Week for Sustainable Development. Abul Ghait criticized Israel's actions, saying they stifle regional growth, drain resources, and the continuous destruction. Abu Ghait also urged the initiative solutions for sustainable development and Arab youth empowerment. The Israeli occupation forces have bombed a military checkpoint belonging to the Lebanese army in Al Amriya in Tyre. According to the initial toll, the attack has killed a Lebanese soldier and injured 18 others. It also burned a military vehicle. Israeli media has reported that Hezbollah launched over 60 rockets from Lebanon with concentrated attacks on the northern Israeli town of Matalla. The Israeli occupation army stated that air raid sirens were activated in several areas of central and northern Israel, adding that it had intercepted some of the projectiles from their side. Hezbollah said it launched missiles at an Israeli army intelligence base in the Tel Aviv suburbs. The Lebanese Health Ministry has announced that the death toll from Israeli attacks on Lebanon climbed over 3,600 and over 15,400 others wounded since October 8th of last year. This came as the Israeli occupation raids on a residential building in Beirut last night resulted in 20 deaths and 66 injuries. Earlier, local Lebanese media reported that at least 34 people were killed and 80 others injured in Israeli airstrikes on southern and eastern Lebanon. The mutual Israeli airstrike and Hezbollah rockets escalate violence in Lebanon, heightening humanitarian crisis and regional tensions.
Violence continues to escalate in Lebanon, with heavy exchange of fire between the Israeli occupation forces and Hezbollah. The conflict has intensified, marked by deadly airstrikes and retaliatory attacks. Israeli warplanes have conducted major airstrikes across Lebanon, including Beirut's southern suburbs, Nabatea, Tyre, and Baalbek. In Al-Basta, 2 8-story buildings were destroyed, killing at least 10 and injuring more than 60 others. Baalbek saw dozens of casualties as strikes targeted residential areas, further worsening the humanitarian situation. In response, Hezbollah launched extensive rocket and drone attacks on Israeli military positions. Strikes targeted settlements with precision-guided drones reported near Khiam. Hezbollah asserts it has repelled multiple Israeli incursions, escalating the confrontation further. The humanitarian toll is mounting as Lebanon's strained infrastructure struggles to cope. Hospitals in the south are overwhelmed by casualties, and displacement continues to rise amid persistent violence. Meanwhile, United States Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin and Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz discussed a potential ceasefire. The United States has urged restraint to prevent broader regional escalation, but no agreement has been reached.
Today, when I talked to him,
with tensions showing no sign of easing, the conflict poses a significant risk of wider destabilization in the region.
The United States has introduced a draft proposal aimed at de-escalating the conflict in Lebanon, focusing on a ceasefire, Hezbollah's disarmament, and the delivery of humanitarian aid. And for more... And for more analysis on the escalating situation, we now move on to Riham Morsi in our newsroom. Riham.
Thank you so much, Rana. To help us analyse the current situation in Lebanon, we're joined from Beirut by the military and strategic affairs expert, Brigadier General Akram Sriwi. Welcome to Qnews and thank you for joining us, sir. Firstly, let's start off by asking, when it comes to the negotiations for a ceasefire, how do you see the differences between the United States and their views and the Israeli differences in perspective when it comes to the diplomatic solutions And how can this impact the regional stability as a whole?
تحياتي لكم ولجميع المشاهدين. لبنان متمسك بتنفيذ القرارات الدولية
committed to execute the international resolution, particularly the resolution 1701. To execute this resolution as it is, literally, and by both sides, not just to be executed by the Lebanese party. Israel only to be executed by the Lebanese party. They not commit to execute the resolution from its side. There are conditions and provisions provided by the resolution upon Israel. The withdrawal from the occupied Lebanese territories, and secondly, of course, to stop their violations of the sovereignty of Lebanon. Israel is still solid to preserve, to proclaim that the right of the violations of the sovereignty of Lebanon whenever and wherever they want, and which is the matter, it's violating the Lebanese sovereignty, which is rejected totally by the state of Lebanon. There's no Lebanese would agree upon this. This is the only main point. But the rest of conditions containing or concerning the supervision and monitoring committees or whoever is going to join it, such a matter is subject to resolution and discussions in reaching settlement. But despite the American effort and despite the U.S. administration is seriously in reaching a specific settlement announced, frankly understand, when he came to the region and led the negotiations seriously and had agreement with the Lebanese side about the suspended points. But when we talk about Israel, he had been struck by the refusal of Israel, despite the draft proposals was discussed with Tel Aviv, as he said. But everyone surprisingly, after following the Tel Aviv and left directly to America, which means that Israel is still interested to complete or to continue the war and to have Lebanon subject to its conditions. Now the matters has escalated brutally, and I think that Benjamin Netanyahu is in a great stake. Firstly, on the level of the war is already been continuing a war over 13 months and never achieved any objectives, not to eradicate Hamas or releasing the prisoners or the eradication of the Hezbollah missiles that still can reach Tel Aviv and the southern. Although from the point of the international law, he is a war criminal. There is a warrant.
Sir, if we could sort of focus on the diplomatic efforts itself, sir. I apologize for cutting you off, but if we could just sort of focus on the diplomatic efforts itself from the United States in coordination with the Israeli side. You spoke a bit about how they are different and how Israel wants to basically maintain everything and get everything they want from the Lebanese but not give back anything. So what role can the United States do to ensure the diplomatic objectives are being prioritized and the negotiations are real?
The state is the sole part that is capable to practice the pressure upon Israel and convince Benjamin Netanyahu for the settlement. But Benjamin Netanyahu sees that it's not for his interest to go for such a specific settlement that imposes him to withdraw from the Lebanese territories and the execution of the resolution 1701. As it is, he wishes to impose no conditions upon this proposal. The United States has tried to present a memorandum of understanding between him and Netanyahu. Are we out of the agreement that is taking place between Lebanon and Israel? But it seems that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is insisted to include some amendments on the resolution of 1701, particularly the right of Israel of the direct intervention wherever they think that there is a violation of the agreement. And we all know that Israel is always creating justifications and pretexts, and therefore that they may use this pretext of there is a violation that would let them or to allow them to enter Lebanon. Therefore, Lebanon cannot accept this condition, and there is supportive stances by the Arab states as stated by the foreign minister of Egypt when it came to Beirut, and they cannot Israel actually maintain the right of violating the sovereignty of Lebanon, as well as France supported this condition. And I think that the main problem is upon Israel that it did not wish the ceasefire, as Netanyahu thinks that they never achieved a great achievement on the ground, on the field. There is some sort of a lowering of the army, despite the recommendation to stop the war and to go for settlement with Lebanon, according to the recommendation provided by the Israeli army, that the settlement with Lebanon will impose more to Hamas. But always there is a disagreement, and it's not new between the military and political institution or establishment rather. And then I think Netanyahu never listened to this, to his commanders. Therefore, the battles are ongoing, and we can see the escalations and the brutal bombardment that targeting Beirut and the capital, and they never, or they never satisfied with attacking the borders, but the military is attacking all the villages of Lebanon.
Sir, you spoke a bit about the idea of international, or the international community in general. You brought up France, for instance, and how they responded. So in your opinion, how has the international community responded to the escalating conflict? And what efforts are being made to push for a ceasefire agreement, and how are they going to pressure the Israeli side to take one, as France has so far?
The international community, in fact, is crippled before Israel. We have seen Israel is attacking the United Nations, the Secretary General, and the ICC and the International Justice Court, by rejecting the executed the UN Security Council resolution as it is above the international law, and there is no state can practice pressure upon Israel but the United States of America, but still is going with a partnership with Israel to support Israel militarily and financially. In the past June, the US American Joe Biden stopped a package of 3,000 bombs to Israel, but the Congress in return went back and passed this deal that they are using in destroying the Lebanese villages and cities. Therefore, the United States of America, in a way or another, is a partner and a contributor of this type of war, and doesn't seem that they exerted a good effort to pressure Netanyahu to stop the war against Lebanon, the genocide to the Lebanese people and the Palestinian people as well.
So, sir, if we could take a look at an on-the-ground sort of situation, the Israelis have been bombing a lot of cities in Lebanon, including Beirut, Tyre, Baalbek, and other areas as well. How has this affected Lebanon's critical infrastructure, and what long-term consequences could we anticipate from these bombings?
Israel is practicing what seems like this using mass destructive weapons by targeting civilian houses to be demolished and leading to the killing of tens of women and children, that they are empty of military targets. According to the added protocol of 1977, that targeting the houses and civilians establishments unless that in case that the missiles were launched from these spaces, but they are owned by their owners from women and children, and Israelis bombarded them, protecting that they are elements of Hezbollah. And in fact, there is no elements of Hezbollah nor weapons.
Yes, sir, unfortunately we're sort of out of time. We're out of time for this segment, but thank you so much for your insight. I apologize, I have to cut you off there, sir. That was military and strategic affairs expert Brigadier General Akram Sriwi. Thank you so much for your joining us here on Q News. And now back to you, Rana, in the studio.
Thank you so much, Riham. And now we move on to the latest developments in Gaza. Israeli opposition leader Yair Lapid has called for a major political initiative toward a regional settlement that could reshape the Middle East. Lapid criticized Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, accusing him of lacking vision and leadership, claiming Netanyahu fears National Security Minister, who also accused Netanyahu of avoiding responsibility, citing a recent document leak scandal as evidence of his alleged incompetence.
בזמן שישראל נלחמת בשבע חזיתות, נתניהו החליש ופגע בצה"ל.
7 Palestinians have been killed and several others have been injured in airstrikes carried by Israeli warplanes on El Maghazi and El Burij refugee camps, central Gaza Strip. Israeli occupation forces have committed several massacres across Gaza. Late last night, Israeli airstrikes renewed their assault on the Kamal Adwan hospital in Beit Lahia in the northern Gaza Strip. The strikes targeted the hospital's main oxygen station, causing injuries to several medical staff. Palestinian media has reported that at least 3 civilians have been killed and injured in a series of Israeli airstrikes that targeted various areas in central and southern Gaza Strip. An Israeli airstrikes on a tent sheltering displaced in Nusayrat refugee camp, causing widespread damage to the makeshift shelter. While in the Palestinian city of Rafah, the occupation forces targeted a group of civilians, killing 1 and injuring others. The Kremlin has confirmed that Russia will respond to the unprecedented escalation caused by the outgoing U.S. administration. In a statement, the Kremlin accused the U.S. of taking increasingly reckless actions that heighten tensions over the ongoing conflict in Ukraine. It also noted that Russia's updated nuclear doctrine serves as a message to the West. Ukraine's security service has analyzed debris from a new Russian ballistic missile that struck the city of Dnipro. In its first public assessment, Ukraine revealed that the missile, which it hit on Thursday, reached a top speed of over 13,000 kilometers per hour and took about 15 minutes to reach its target. Russian President Vladimir Putin confirmed the strike, stating it targeted a Ukrainian military facility. He described the missile, known as Orshinik, as an immediate-range hypersonic weapon, calling it a warning to the West against supporting Ukraine's war effort. That brings us to the end of our news bulletin. Here's what we have been covering. Joseph Borrell urges global action to prevent Lebanon's collapse amid escalating Israeli strikes. Yair Lapid urges a major political initiative for a regional settlement in the Middle East. And the Kremlin confirms Russia will respond to the unprecedented escalation by the outgoing U.S. administration. And this concludes our news bulletin for the hour. Don't forget to follow Qnews on YouTube, Facebook, X, Instagram, and TikTok at QNewsEG to stay informed. Thank you for watching and stay tuned for more updates on Qnews.